Well, it's been nearly 60 days since the Uvalde, Texas school shooting. And while parents and school district officials investigate that bungled police response, there's been no recommendation on reform for police training or gun safety across the state of Texas.
Yeah, and you can kind of contrast that to what we saw lawmakers do just 23 days after the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. That was back in 2018. Florida is a Republican-led state like Texas, but they were able to act a lot sooner on gun legislation. I'm going to share with you now a segment from a documentary called 23 Days.
Hello, we're at Stoneman Douglas High School, and I think there's a shooter.
February 14th, 2018. A shooter was inside Parkland, Florida's Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School.
Okay, is anybody injured?
Yes, a lot of blood. Please help, please.
By the time it was over, 14 students and 3 staffers were dead.
When I go to the cemetery where Alex is buried, there's 5 children from the Parkland shooting there. That is sickening. That is disgusting. What does that say about our country?
The next day, Florida lawmakers were inside that school, a crime scene, to see a school turned into a killing field, and they say it changed them.
Every Republican leader who came to the school was crying because it shakes you to your core. It reminded them, I believe, that they're parents and that if it can happen in Parkland, which was the safest city in all of Florida, it can happen in their neighborhood.
There's no reason why I should be more safe in the state capitol than our children are in our schools. And, you know, and at that point, thoughts and prayers were not enough.
Bill Galvano was then the Republican incoming president of the Florida Senate. A devout Catholic, Galvano found himself at church the night of the shooting. It was Ash Wednesday. He left that church telling us he was convinced he had to do something.
What do we want? Gun control! What do we want now?
That do something became a rallying cry, and for the first time, it seemed politicians just couldn't ignore it.
This happened faster than anything I've ever seen for an issue as significant as guns. This was a tsunami politically.
20 years, 18 days, Mr. President.
This is horrible. This happened 3 weeks and 2 days ago. We got legislation passed, it's enacted. That's how our government should work.
A Republican State House and Republican Senate passed, and a Republican governor signed new laws into place 23 days after that school became a killing field, just 23 days.
I'm going to have to grant the risk protection order for a period of 1 year. Between now and the end of 1 year, you absolutely cannot have any firearms or ammunition at your house.
Today, that law in Florida has been used more than 8,000 times to enact red flag orders, keeping guns from those a judge determines in Florida are a danger to themselves or others. Republican sheriffs now use that more than anyone else in the state.
And now you're one of the most frequent users of them, Sheriff.
Right, and we will continue to be because they work and they're the right thing to do, and they don't infringe on people's rights.
Guns can't be purchased by anyone under 21 years old in Florida, and there is a 3-day waiting period for all firearm purchases. All of that done in just 23 days.
Not one Republican who voted for that bill, not one, lost their re-election. Not one, by the way. So if you're looking for folks in Washington or in Texas, can you protect kids, right, and still go back to office? Because we all know it's all about self-preservation. The answer is yes.
And that was a report from Ted Oberg at our Houston station, KTRK. We want to bring in Ted now to talk about this investigative reporting. And Ted, obviously you're covering what's going on in Texas. We're seeing school shootings, and obviously the most recent one in Uvalde. We see what Florida legislators were able to do and enact. How effective were those laws? Are those laws? And why can't Texas follow suit?
Yeah, it's a great question. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking a look at what we've done here. I think if you talk to people in Florida, they would say it's working. It's not perfect, but let's look at a couple examples. In many shootings, it is teenage suspects, teenage male suspects. If Texas had enacted the law that Florida did in 2018, the suspect in Uvalde would not have been able to buy those weapons on his 18th birthday. That's just one. Education Week tracks school shootings. Since the Florida law was enacted in 2018, not a single Florida student has been killed in a school shooting in that state. Texas certainly can't say that. And then that red flag law, been used more than 8,000 times. Studies would suggest that has saved hundreds of lives in Florida alone. That Republican sheriff who uses it so often says it's made his community safer and encourages Texas not only to adopt it, but to change our gun culture.
And Ted, you see here that it really did make some kind of a difference, that lawmakers going to the scene and actually visiting the scene of the shooting might have had an impact.
Oh, I think if you talk to those lawmakers, TJ, it absolutely had an impact. So many of them told us themselves it changed them to be in that school hours after that happened, to see homework blowing in the wind, windows shattered, backpacks piled up. In Texas, we don't believe many lawmakers have been inside that school in Uvalde. Governor Abbott, for example, has been to the community for briefings, but we don't believe inside the school for a tour. Governor Rick Scott did that, and then just 3 weeks later, signed that law. And as you heard in the piece there, it's important to point out, not a single Republican in Florida who supported that bill lost their reelection. The notion that these are untouchable issues in American politics just doesn't ring true if you look at the Florida example.
Well, we appreciate you, Ted Oberg, appreciate your reporting, appreciate you spending some time here with us.
And thank you very much, Ted, because as we know, being on those scenes never leaves you, and it changes you.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.